So we had another interview with Brian Birmingham, the lead of Classic WoW, the other day come out, and with it came a bunch of stuff that we had somewhat heard before, a little bit of extrapolation on some of the points raised when he spoke to me as well. But one little tidbit in particular that was news to us sort of hit the airwaves and all hell broke loose a little bit, maybe more within my community, I don't know, or at least with me, but I did find some stuff online on Reddit and YouTube as well where people were in a bit of a huff and puff about a little tidbit that was dropped that the team is considering for Wrath Classic. And I thought I would just go over this interview for the most part, starting with the one thing I definitely want to talk about and leading into a bunch of the other stuff that was covered with a couple of old friends of the show. And who better to get here than these two fine gentlemen? Let's start off with Fahq. Mate, how you going? How's it been?
Now I'm going great, Josh. This is wonderful to talk about this, and it's been too long. So I'm happy to be here.
As always, it's always too long. We were joking before just then about me coming on a little strong with someone I met in the game yesterday, and maybe suggesting to them that we should rent a house and move in together and just play WoW all day was going a bit far. But that's something I should have suggested to you a long time ago, Fahq.
I agree. It's things are a little humid in Indiana, and I hear that Australia is just has no ecological problems whatsoever, and housing is super cheap. So it sounds like the place to go.
Very good. And well, you'd be joining this next guest and I in Australia. Now, this person, it has definitely been too long. I don't know why I wait so long between like getting you on the show, because we talk, a few times a week. We have drinks together. You all know him. You all love him. It's Hunk. Mate, how are you?
Good, mate. And I actually have a question for you today.
Ooh.
How come you never introduced me first, ever?
Well,
what is with that? I always feel like I am like your second tier guest. I know you've got S tier Fahq over there. I get that. I understand. But every time.
It reminds me of that moment with Mayor Quimby when he, they knock on his door and he's like, no, I am staying home with the wife. Is that how I introduce you?
I think that's it. Yeah, I'm the backup.
No, I love staying home with the wife. Sorry, Fahq, what was that, man?
No, I'm sorry. It's your SO that you forget to introduce at parties when your coworkers come by.
Oh, exactly. And then you have that really awkward moment where you just go, oh, right, sorry. This is
and
so
then you've got Fahq, who's like, he's like the Freddie Quimby, isn't he? He's like, ladies and gentlemen, the punch has been spiked.
You're both the kings. We love you here. I'm so glad to be able to talk about something like this with you guys, because we're going to keep it nice and casual and be able to shoot the shit and have a laugh and give each other a bit of shit. It won't be anywhere near as full on as the LFD episode, but we are discussing some important things. So guys, no time like the present. Let's dive straight into it. The reason I rallied you here together today was solely around the main topic, which was Brian dropped the tidbit that the team were actually considering tinkering with racial abilities in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. Now, for those of you who, for whatever reason, if you're not aware, Wrath does introduce, a new racial for humans. It was called Every Man for Himself. I believe they've changed the name of that. Hunk or someone, you'll have to help me out on what they changed the name to. I can't remember, but it's something new.
In retail?
No. In Wrath Classic, they've said they're going to call it something else. I think in retail they changed it as well. I'm not too sure. But either way, the ability is basically, Will of the Forsaken on drugs. It does not share a cooldown with your PvP trinket. In Wrath of the Lich King Classic, it's great. As far as I understand, I'll have to look into it. If I get it wrong, you guys will forgive me. It's, every 2 minutes, get out of whatever, and you're good to go in PvP. Now, Will of the Forsaken has been changed in Wrath Classic to share. I believe it shares a cooldown with your trinket, so it has been massively neutered in Wrath Classic, whereas the Alliance get this fantastic new ability, that, you know, friendship with Will of the Forsaken is over. Whatever this new ability is my new best friend meme. So guys, I want to start here and just talk about before we talk about changes, let's ease into it with a discussion about the player base's obsession with racial abilities and how much it means to us as players. It goes without saying that these things are incredibly important, but I'll get you guys to kick off. Fahq, I'll start with you, mate, and just say, if I asked you to summarize to someone who didn't play WoW, what's the deal with racial abilities and why is the player base obsessed with them? What would you say to them?
I would say, to someone who doesn't know it, it was intended as a way of giving flavor to the game so that you could play something and get something a little different depending on what you selected. It was meant to be a small bonus. But because the game has certain elements that some of these racials really promote, depending on whether you play PvE or PvP, they quickly become highly desired powers, and people feel that they can't compete if they don't have a particular racial set. So you can only choose one faction and one race. And sometimes people say, well, if you're not playing this particular faction or race and you're playing the game in a certain way, you're just at a huge, huge disadvantage. And for this expansion, people have had these characters. Some of these people have had these characters for 3 years now, and they're going to be real attached to them. And so if they feel that connection, like they're losing something that they've poured their time into, they're going to be really disgruntled.
Okay, Hunk, how about you? Is there anything you would add to that, or would you spin it a different way?
Look, I think Fahq is pretty spot on. The flavor it adds to the game for the the RP value, making the individual races feel a bit different from each other, I think is very important to the game. But there should be limits on it, and I think a lot of the additions and changes in Wrath went a little bit too far. Okay. Particularly like with human, like Night Elf. Well, we'll get into the changes in a bit. Yeah,
that's right. So, you know, it is my understanding the human isn't the only thing that got added in Wrath. I think a few things were changed. We'll get into that. But mates, you know, it's an obsession with being the best is at the forefront of my mind when I think of what I would say to this, you know, mythical individual who has never heard of World of Warcraft and doesn't understand, you know, why the player base plays the game the way they do. And we talk about BIS lists, we talk about what it takes to be on top of the mountain, and PvP is a large part of World of Warcraft. So simply doing what it takes to be the best, and it's a step that starts at the character creation screen for many, if you are that way inclined, if you are, you know, a min-maxer, so to speak, you will choose a race that you feel gives you the best competitive advantage in a game where competition is rife. So I understand, absolutely, it's very simple to understand why, and sorry, the title they changed it to was Will to Survive is the name of the ability in retail and also coming in Wrath Classic. I understand why Will to Survive is coveted by the player base. And we talked about, oh, you know, here it comes. This is what the Alliance needs. A big boon in an expansion to perhaps put a little bit of a dent in that Horde faction dominance. And it's certainly something that I was expecting personally as well. I was saying, you know, God, it's so hard to say, but is this something that is that powerful and players are that obsessed with it that could cause a 5... I mean, I struggle to say anything greater than 5, but like a 5% shift in faction change on your server. You know, the PvPers who are really good at PvP are absolutely going to re-roll for this. They need it, quite frankly. They've been told by the community, if you don't have this, you are doing it wrong. So, you know, it's not something that's concerned me personally so much, even though I know I'm currently playing a human, you know, paladin leveling one up. But I see why people feel the need for this. Like, I can't play without it. Hunk, if I were to say to you, you know, I shouldn't even ask this question, but I'm like, you know, how hard do people laugh at the serious PvPer who now wants to not be a human? I mean, I'm sure it's viable, but is it something that the number one player in the world would ever even consider?
Like it's certainly, I think we are, when we're talking about people re-rolling like en masse, I don't think that's going to happen at all. If anything, there could be more people going Horde. I think parsing culture is bigger than PvP culture in WoW Classic, and Troll is by far the best like PvE DPS race for casters. Orc is very, very strong for casters and melee. I think like Horde is still the much better PvE faction. Which that often gets overlooked a lot in Wrath, is how good Horde is in PvE now. Though, yeah, like in terms of like if you're playing Alliance, yeah, like there's no reason to be, I guess, really anything but human. If that 2-minute CD, like on every man for himself, it frees up a trinket spot. So you can use like a Battle Masters and a Death's Choice or Verdict. Death's Choice, I think, is the Alliance one from TOC Trinket, which is like that 300 attack power or something. Yeah, it's a significant like increase in damage for the same utility. Humans also, like the human spirit like got nerfed to 3% from 5%, but casters have a lot of spirit scaling now via like mage armor and like fell armor. So I can't remember which one gives crit and which one gives spell power, but humans also like probably for a caster the strongest PvE choice as well. So like particularly if you're a caster, there's very little reason to like not go human. There's only plus sides. And then like, if you have any interest in PvP, you're probably going to be going human or night elf. So
you raise a good point, Fahq. I'll throw it over to you. I'll just jump in because Hunk, you've made me think now. You're right in that I know people are obsessed with past culture too. I mean, my knee-jerk reaction was to say, oh, but Hunk, there are just as many people that are obsessed with PvP results as there are past culture. But
I disagree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I disagree with myself. I caught myself saying, well, hang on. It's been very obvious through TBC, and I know, Hunk, you haven't been playing as much TBC, and I know, Fahq, you didn't play TBC at all, but it's been very obvious that arena participation is way down versus what it was back in the day. People simply... I don't want to be hyperbolic and be like, people aren't engaging at all. Of course people are doing arenas, but not at the same level of participation as was noticeable back in the day. Now, there's a multitude of reasons for that. Things like GDKP culture being a thing. People would generally PvP back in the day because it was just a grind that was accessible for them to try and pick up their quote-unquote welfare epics through the PvP system. Even if you were shit at PvP, you could still plug away and get something. Nowadays, you can still be shit at the game. Just do what you got to do to get in a GDKP and buy what you need. So people might be straying away from arenas because of that. But then also, whether or not the player base is to blame too, in terms of like, the arena's incredibly competitive. People know the game very well now, and there's all these high-skill players in there that scares off a lot of the sort of more average players. So there's that side of it too. So Hunk might be onto something that my argument of a 5% swing it'll be nothing close to that, because there's quite frankly just not many of those people that care about PvP out there. That's a long fucking spiel from me, Fahq you. What do you think about all that?
Good question. I agree with Hunk. I don't think there's going to be massive re-rolling. I think you've got, two groups of people that have invested so much time, and the depowering can be demotivating, but it's unlikely to force people to completely re-roll, except for those people that are highly competitive. And I think Hunk is right. And my first guess was that the parse culture was much, much higher than the PvP culture in numbers. And I don't know how to really answer this. So I looked at Ironforge Pro to kind of look at it by server. And you actually have a sizable contingent of people on PvP, if Ironforge Pro is accurate, that have ranked like a quarter to a third. And at first I thought, well, that's not that big. But if you're dealing with a quarter to a third of your player base, and they are now looking at their race as largely unviable, or they're at this significant, as Hunk said, disadvantage, and that they basically lose a trinket slot to a specific race because of what they had, or their PvP traits have gone way down or taken this big nerf, and they've been working with them for so long. Josh, early on you said that you said to me, players in Classic want to feel powerful. especially when it's a nostalgic content. And so when they know that that power is being stripped away and we already know what it's likely to do, I think that breeds kind of a sense of fear. And when you have that sense of fear for a 30-year player base, I think it's smart for the Classic design team to at least consider this and talk about it, even if the solution is going to be far more complex than just giving one paladin seal that had been introduced with a new race and faction and class option, like in TBC with the Seal of Martyr and Sealed Blood. To have those, it's going to be a lot more difficult than that, but at least they're talking about it. And at first I thought, is this a solution in search of a problem? But looking at the numbers, it may be worth considering for them to at least talk about it and get a sense of how many people are really pursuing competitive PvP. It seems higher than I initially thought. So maybe those numbers are way off. And maybe we're talking about 10% of the WoW population. And then maybe changing these racials is going to make a big mess for the parse culture and the PvE culture at the expense of a small group of hardcore players.
Okay, well let's dive into it there. Fahq's got us started just on the notion that this is even on the drawing board, and this conversation actually started up within the Classic team. I'm still shocked, quite frankly. It's really blindsided me. It's not something I think anyone was expecting to hear. Whilst we've been, aware and sort of on board for the most part with the hashtag some changes vibe that started with, really sort of hit a flow with TBC. I feel like this one is, I mean, as the joke goes, some changes as long as it's the ones that I agree with. But this one is just, people have started to bring up the fact that Blizzard seems to be turning over stones in areas in which weren't a concern for the player base. So there's starting to be changes where no one was asking for them. Now, don't get me wrong, I know both of you are going to sit here and as it should be, intelligently expand on the conversation of, well, perhaps racial should be looked at, and if you were to look at them, what could you potentially do? And we'll go down that garden path. I am much more so of the camp that I don't believe anything should be done. And like I say, I'm blindsided to the point that not a single voice in any corner of the internet has asked for this to be looked at. And yet here we are with Blizzard mentioning it quite seriously in conversation. And, this goes hand in hand with the LFD thing as well. Like I said, not a single voice, not even a prominent voice. I couldn't see anything out there saying remove LFD from Wrath Classic. And yet that's what we got. And so if racials were to be tinkered with, I think that would be a second major instance of going against, not just, obviously there are going to be instances where the player base doesn't necessarily think of a change, but Blizzard does, and it can be positive. I get that. That's absolutely a possibility. But I feel like these are, in my opinion, again, my humble opinion, these are drastically negative changes coming from, once again, completely silent corners. So I'll just read out. Hunk, I'll get you to kick off when I'm done. So I'm being very verbose here, guys. I'm much chattier than usual. I'm not trying to sort of drown you guys out. I'll shut the fuck up in a second. But I'll just read you the paragraph or two verbatim that we got from Brian on this for a bit more context for you guys. So it came via a question about race changes, and it led into this about halfway through the answer. This first sentence, by the way, is one of the most laughable sentences I've heard, and I don't think Brian meant it to be. It was very, very much so unintentional comedy, but you'll hear it now when he starts with this. PvP players are more concerned about their personal accomplishments and a level playing field than they are with their character's story. Just as a just as a side note, if you think PvP players love a level playing field, you're not paying attention. But anyway,
they'd be playing a different game.
They would fucking oath they'd be playing a different game. But anyway, I digress.
There are some I think the really like high end arena players do, but most players like getting gear and then smashing people who have worse gear.
They don't really want faction balance, and they don't want to fight characters that are similar in gear or skill to them.
I like being overgeared and smashing people too. It's fun. I feel like a raid boss.
All right, I'll start again. Here we go. PvP players are more concerned about their personal accomplishments in a level playing field than they are with the character story. The abilities of each race change between Burning Crusade and Lich King, and they want access to what's perceived to be the best abilities, while still being able to keep the accomplishments and titles they've already earned. In Burning Crusade Classic, we granted Seal of the Martyr to Alliance, for example, so it's not entirely off the table to do something similar here. But it's a more complicated issue than simply mirroring the Paladin seal. To illustrate why that's a challenge, let's go back to the previously mentioned Tauren and Gnome example. Imagine if we gave everyone the Gnome's power that would remove the option to use Warstomp for Tauren players, if you thought you had a creative way to use it. Or to provide another example, if we gave everybody the ability to choose any racial they wanted in Arena, it would interfere with your ability to predict and counter your opponent. You wouldn't normally expect to see a Warstomp from a Gnome after all, but it's something players know a Tauren can do. We'd like to do something that feels a bit more fantasy forward to address this concern, but we don't know exactly what yet. We joked about disallowing racial abilities entirely and having goblin referees that run onto the field to throw a red card if you use one, and while we will likely won't do anything that silly, that gives you an idea of the way we'd like to address this concern. Okay, I'll end the quote there. Let me throw this out to you guys. Hunk or Fahq, you jump in first. I don't mind. I think that last bit is actually quite telling, where he says that, yes, we were joking about something that was extremely silly, but it might give you some insight into how far we might be willing to go with these things, such as disallowing racials in Arena. Before we get into what could happen, what do you think about something as extreme as that?
Well, they already disallow like long cooldown abilities. Like you can't use like recklessness and things like that, right? In Arena.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of the long cooldowns, yes, and like engineering items as well. Some of them aren't.
I don't see. That. I think that disabling them in Arena is probably the if that's their goal, their focus is sensible.
If you're going to do it, that's the place to do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
It's tough because again, you're removing flavor that you've had, and I think it's complicated by the fact that you're changing racials to a pretty consistent and significant degree from TBC to Lich King in the way that wasn't done from Classic to TBC. So you're getting changes, but you're kind of losing the things that you felt really special about or made you feel special. And I think part of it is people feel the loss of Will of the Forsaken. They feel the big energy gain from humans in particular, who now have perception and now have the everything for himself. So like, I think it's that feeling of like, hey, that's not fair. This was mine, and why are you taking it away from me? So that sense of loss, and it's a the problem I have with like just removing racials is it does kind of go to the heart of that LFD debate that you had, where it's that Lich King is on the spectrum of classic vanilla immersion to retail homogenization, and Lich King is right on that liminal point. And it's a real like lucid change of, okay, the racials now don't matter. We're blocking them out here. Even though I still do agree, if you're going to do it, Arena is the place to do it because that's where the people would care about it. And you can go in lots of different crazy directions. Maybe the racials matter early on, and maybe after a certain rank where you're getting some things, they cease. But it just seems, if you want to, like Hunk said, if you want to smash stuff, part of being able to smash stuff is to be able to use all of your abilities. And some of those are going to be racial and some of them are pretty cool. And the reason why people selected certain classes.
I agree. Hunk, let me throw it to you, but inject the following, just piggybacking off of what Fahq said. You know, we very recently had North on the show talking about engineering, and, you know, I've gotten a bit of flack in other corners, and that's okay. You know, if you guys do happen to listen to it, I've been checking out the Dalaran Sewers podcast with Scotty J and Ruggs. You know, Ruggs can't get over the fact that I asked that question of Brian about engineering, which, you know, I appreciate, but, you know, I don't regret asking it at all about, you know, whether or not engineering would be looked at in any way, shape, or form in Wrath Classic, given how mandatory it feels when they made a similar call on leatherworking in TVC. Now, like I said, let me double down again, guys. I don't want engineering to be changed. I do not want to change. I don't think it should be touched. I asked from a bloody, you know, to hopefully spur Brian into an intellectual conversation about why they make the decisions that they make and why engineering might be kept untouched in the game because of reason X, Y, Z. Ultimately, Brian sort of, you know, it was news to him, so he didn't go down the path that I thought we might go down. So I would only say it half blew up in my face, but I still don't regret asking the question. But the reason I'm raising that is North and I talked about this, and North gave me a fun bit of shit as well, going, Josh, what the fuck were you doing asking that question? We do not want engineering touch. Don't even put it in their heads. And he went on to say that the reason, in North's opinion, that engineering shouldn't be touched and hopefully won't be touched in Wrath is that engineering, whilst universally agreed being slightly overpowered in Wrath, and slightly might be, you know, a euphemism there, it's fun, damn it. It's fucking fun. It presents buttons that are fun to press. And why do we play games? To have fun. So why would we start to remove some of that fun, you know, in the name of perhaps what some might see as arbitrary balance? I don't know. And I think he raises a really fucking good point in saying that. So that's, you know, I'm completely on board with that. And that's part of the reason I say do not touch engineering. But circling back around to what Fahq just said, we've got these racial abilities as well. And quite frankly, some of these buttons are very fun to press, particularly in a very tactical way. If you pull off that huge War Stomp interrupt at a clutch moment, if you use Will of the Forsaken at the right time, these are fun. They make you feel, you know, in control of your character, like you are good at the game. They, you know, release the serotonin or whatever the fuck it is that you need in your body to feel good. So why would we take away from the good times, Hunk?
Well, look, Wrath is the start of my favorite racial in WoW, which is the new Shadow Meld. I think where you can drop combat, you can use it to evade incoming spells and projectiles. That's a really good racial to use. It feels really good to do something kind of cool with it. And look, if I don't think it's a hot take to talk about disabling certain things in Arena, but if they're looking more broadly, like Battlegrounds, open world, I think then it's more of a problem. I don't know, like Wrath's the expansion aside from Classic, like this. You jump in, fuck you, go.
Hunk, I'm curious. You say open world. Is there any open world left? The faction imbalance and flying mounts and everything. Like, is there really anything that's going to be where you need to worry about this stuff?
Well, there was a lot of PvP in Wrath. I guess like Wintergrasp is probably going to be dead on most servers. But also like the gates of ICC, that was always quite chaotic and fun. Most servers have horrible faction imbalances. On OCE, it's bad, but not entirely ruined. I think it's like 60-40 on Aragorn and maybe like 55-45 on Yojimbo. And I think keeping the racials like for battlegrounds and things, that makes sense. But if they're going to disable them in Arena, I don't think that's a hot take. That makes sense to me.
Well, just to push you a little bit further, Hunk, and sorry, I was having a giggle before because I like when we get to the stage of the chat that you just start pronouncing Fahq's name as fuck you. It's like you've had a few beers and started to slur.
He knows what he's done with his name. He's well aware.
I always loved it when Def Camp was on. Def Camp was on with "fuck you" and would always just blatantly say "fuck you." I was like, I loved it. But to push you a little bit there, Hunk, removing the fun factor, which I've already raised, don't you think that it also? I'm really treading carefully and don't want to be overly hyperbolic when I say this, but do you think it slightly dumbs down Arena in that, like I said, it removes a few buttons that really came into, the minutiae of tactical play, of like figuring out when those moments are that you want to use these really key abilities that you have and others don't. Do you feel that now that we're just reduced to, okay, granted, your class has 45 fucking buttons you can press, but removing those flavor buttons, does it not make Arena simple? It won't by any means, but just remove a little bit of the tactical nous that some people might need.
Look, that can apply to certain things, but like to something like Every Man for Himself, there's no like tactical nuance there. Like, they have it, or they've got a PvP trinket. That's just the reality. And they have the same cooldown. You don't have to adjust how you play. All it means is that the human player has a trinket with 300 more attack power and a proc that, if it procs, is going to be very problematic for you, say. If Every Man for Himself had a 3-minute cooldown, or then it would be probably a bit more of a fair balance, because then you're actually making a meaningful choice between the trinket and the racial. And if you take the trinket for the lower cooldown, you basically got a wasted racial, I guess. But it doesn't. There's no like. There's only flavor, to the player, but there's also power to the player, and it doesn't change how you play around it.
How about you, Fahq? If I took racials away from Arena, does it dumb down Arenas significantly, minutely, or not at all?
I have to feign being a novice on this, that I am not an experienced Arena player, and I think that the people that this discussion is geared towards, the people that are really, really responding are responding about the PvP racial, though they are going to have a different opinion about how racial tweaks are going to change Arena. I have to agree with Hunk. There's not a lot of nuance, and a big change is that Horde is getting neutered with its two biggest PvP defensive racials, and humans are getting a massive boost with their PvP racial. So I feel like there's just a couple of things that are being changed here that are making it so you see one race getting a boost while two others that have been had a big advantage in PvP are getting that removed. So apart from that, I can't really offer any opinion that would come from knowledge.
All good. We would have got an opinion from Ale, but I think he'll be listening to this at home on his phone and probably would have smashed his phone against a wall about 15 minutes ago when he heard Hunk was all for this.
I'm not all for this. I'm a huge believer in keeping racial flavor in. God, this sounds like a really horrible conversation out of context. Keeping the flavor of all keeping the flavor of all the different fantasy races one can choose in this video game, intact. I really like the concept of them. It's just, look, I'm not a competitive PvP player. I don't really get into PvP. I'm actually, it's more like troll berserking, that gives me conniptions, if anything. But I mean, like the thing with the orc getting nerfed, like hardiness is now like a 15% less duration instead of a flat resist chance, I believe. And that was a really that was a really like difficult perk, like racial to play around previously, because it could just deny a significant win condition to the other team, like in many Arena teams. Denies a burst window, eats one or more CDs before they've realized it's procced, and a lot of like good teams could just straight up like win an Arena match just because of a hardiness proc. And that's not something you can really play around either, like, because how do you play around it? Like, they resist your 5-point kidney shot or they don't. You just have to take the chance.
And it didn't have a diminishing return, so it could proc twice in a row.
Yeah. And I'm not sure, did it put stuns on diminishing return when it procced? Did they? I don't think it did, though. When they resisted, it doesn't go on diminishing returns,
no.
or does it?
No, I don't. As far as I know, it doesn't do a diminishing returns. Now, I'm probably going to get some flack if it does, but I know that it is capable of proccing twice in a row.
Yeah, and usually
that slowing it down is not nearly the nerf or not nearly the power that stopping it cold once or twice would have.
100%. Like if you resisted, say, the 5-point kidney or the Hodge, like into like that cooldown burst window in threes, you just straight up denied like that kill potential. That win condition could be taken away by that proc. Yeah, so it's a significantly powerful racial. Even at 15%, when it went from 25 to 15, it was still too powerful because there was like a 15% chance of just denying a win condition. Yeah, so I agreed with that particular change. I thought that was really good. I actually think that the racial balance is probably better in Wrath because of that. So, like, I mean, we didn't see this massive, like, we didn't see everyone re-rolling Orc really in TBC for Arena. So I don't know. I don't really.
But you did see a general migration, and I think part of that is because Classic was such a PvE game, and TBC started shifting that a little bit more to PvP. So you had a significant number of people playing Alliance because the overall advantage of the raid and speed times and playing Alliance had a I think North called it a Horde has a higher ceiling, but when you looked at the best times in the world and the fastest players, it was Alliance because of the no mage and Paladin. So you've got that shift that happened in TBC, and a lot of people switched over to Horde, and so a lot of the like top end players saying I want to do both of these things switched over to Horde, and you could do that switch a little easier then, and that it further tilted the scales of, okay, well, the good players, the battleground players, everybody's on Horde. So if I'm on Alliance, I'm having trouble in battlegrounds, I can really only do Arena. And then you open up the whole conversation of, is this an Arena change or is it an everything change? And if it's an everything change, that opens up so many problems that I think you're going to risk alienating significant amounts of your player base who really want these things in their game for an everything kind of perspective, let alone, anything outside of Arena.
I mean, like things like Will of the Forsaken, it's not useless. I mean, they did remove the immunity, which is kind of annoying. And so like it puts the PvP trinket on a 45-second cooldown, but there is only that. That does mean you can kind of like use them, in it sort of like consecutively with that 45-second gap. So there is some utility there, but I mean, if you're a Horde player and you had, say, an undead mage or an undead warlock, you'd be really, like, if you're a warlock, you'd be really questioning, like, re-rolling Orc if you're a warlock player and you really cared about, like, the min-maxing. Now, Blood Fury is, like, just that spell or attack or heal flat power. Doesn't have the healing buff, or Troll with, like, Berserking's just a flat 20% cast speed or attack speed for 10 seconds. Berserking is so good in Wrath.
It's so good. And that pet damage, just for if you're doing PvE, I mean, it's so massive. That and Blood Fury.
For demo and Affliction,
The Horde PvE racials are really, really strong. So it's clear.
It's like there's a huge conversation about like the PvP racials, but the PvE racials in Wrath are probably more imbalanced than the PvP racials, if anything. Well, I wouldn't say that. That's a bit much, but
we'll get there. We'll get there very soon. One more thing, just on the PvP side of things. We've talked about Arena and the ups and downs of removing racials from Arena. And we've lightly touched on, you guys have sort of said already, maybe just Arena, it might not be a good idea, removing racials or, altogether from the game. But we go to plan B, which should be, okay, if we're not talking about, the drastic measure, which I don't think anyone's talking about, which is removing racials altogether, or more just removing racials from Arena. If we're now talking about changing racials, is this something that you guys, Hunk, sorry, I keep saying, Hunk, you're advocating for this, but as you said, you're kind of not. You're happy with things the way they are, but if it were to be done, it seems to be the case that, you can see a world where, logic might win out here, that there is some balancing to be done.
Surgical changes is what I'd like.
Okay, so we'll start on the surgical changes. And again, I'm not an advocate of this, but I'd love to hear what ideas you've got, if you've thought of this at all. What do you think Blizzard could possibly tinker with that would move things in a positive direction? If will to survive truly is an issue, what are we talking about? Are we simply doing something as easy as increasing the cooldown on it? What
is
are we
that
doing?
The name that they're using?
Yeah, will to survive.
Will to survive.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so you go, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, so it has the 2-minute CD, and that actually lines up with a lot of cooldown windows. So there can be this problem, obviously Arena, it's about CC control and then cooldown burst. It lines up with a lot of cooldown windows, like the 2-minute cooldown window. So it's always like a trinket. So it's always kind of ready for the next cooldown period, assuming the arena goes long enough, which it will in later phases. So I think increasing the cooldown by 30 seconds would actually make the choice of racial versus actually using a trinket slot a lot more important. But right now it's just flat out, you just don't use the PvP trinket. There's no reason to. If you've got a decent PvP trinket. Decent PvE trinket to replace it with.
Okay, so that's one thing. I mean, outside of will to survive, is that really? I mean, is that the basis of this whole racial conversation that we're having? Is it just this one fucking ability, or is it really? No. Oh no, there's actually a whole bunch of stuff that we need to put under the magnifying glass again.
Well, that's the thing. That's the main one everyone focuses on, because it's not. So it's just basically gives humans an extra trinket slot. That's all it does. So people get annoyed because humans just flat out have more stats. Just go into arena, they've got higher stats. So people get annoyed about that. But if you start looking at that one, you're going to have to start looking at other ones. Shadow Meld has a lot of really niche use. For dodging attacks and things like that. It's basically not an interrupt, but a free line of sight. If you're outside detection range. So there's a lot of things that need to be changed. I think just the main thing is that Horde in PvP feels kind of a bit lackluster now with the Orc stun resist change. So,
well, if I can keep you going just before we throw it to Fahq on this, you mentioned earlier that you were actually far more concerned about the balance regarding PvE as opposed to PvP. So if you were in the lab, if you are being fair and trying to, make it balanced on both sides, you mentioned berserking and stuff. What are we talking about?
I'd probably just go back to the old berserking. I mean, that had more flavor anyway. And just have it scale with health. So there's some danger and risk, or it's just flat out weaker than it is. Yeah.
Okay. Fahq, how about you? Has your mind wandered to anything that might bring balance back to the Force?
Partly no, and partly it's because I don't want to. I like the imbalance. I really would rather it consist like that. I think it is pretty significantly skewed towards Horde, but it was pretty significantly skewed towards Alliance and Classic. And the PvE aspect of this game is much more about accessibility, persistence, and then a small group of people that are interested in parse culture and racing. And for the racers, are you really dedicated to first in the world or first on your realm, regardless of faction? Are you happy with being the best in your faction? Do you want to stay with it and play with it? I would like some elements of the immersion to continue, and obviously this is the last one that really is in that realm because Kata makes a very strong break. So I personally would rather that it holds on to it. So I have not spent a lot of time in saying what are ways that you could do to modify some of these racials. And part of the reason I'm reticent about this is I feel like you would be doing unnecessary surgery on some of this stuff. So like the analogy when I was trying to wrap my head around this all day, where I went to was Magic the Gathering. And so Josh, I don't know, do you know Magic? Did you play at all?
I don't play, but I definitely know it. We did like a 3-hour interview with Bubba Share Show about the origins of Magic. Yeah.
Okay. So you know, in the early days of Magic, they had like the Power 9. They had these cards that were basically broken, but they weren't broken until people realized how powerful they were and constructed decks around them, and then they would have to restrict or ban these cards. We can't go back to that and to just start to plug in things and say, well, you know, maybe we could put Black Lotus in if we did it this way. I think that's a lot of effort put into something that is not broken. And it's not a fundamental imbalance where you would just completely eradicate Alliance PvE, because there's too many people that care about Alliance and they want to play Alliance and they want to play with their friends and they've got guilds that are going, and it's not going to destroy your opportunity. You're going to feel probably more powerful if you sat down with a raid with an Orc Hunter than you would with a Night Elf Hunter. You're probably just going to feel that power if you put them side to side. But the game is designed for you to not really do that. It's designed for you to pick a side and go with it. And there's still some value in WoW doing this classic feel of saying, we're not going to go all the way towards removing this stuff that you know and love, even though you know that you can't go back. And even though you know here's going to be the negative consequence to you compared to another person and another situation if you make this particular choice. But as you know, you said earlier, if that's really that important, play a different game. There are plenty of other games where it matters not at all what you choose in the beginning. It's just for cosmetic purposes, and you're going to be able to pick and choose your min-max and have your perfect solution. There's a lot of other games that are out there that can do that. Part of what makes WoW, meaningful is that it connects to something bigger. So I guess this is my deep-throated defense that I told you I wasn't really gonna do, but don't mess with them. They work really well.
I was gonna say, you guys are all over the place. You're up, you're down, you're left, you're right. Are you for this or against it?
I'm against it, but I will always look at the points of what are the reasons behind it. I don't think the PvE community is significantly negatively impacted enough the way that the Twitch-based half-second sort of difference between life and death in arena players are used to feeling, and having things removed or feeling like they're being neutered, or another person given an advantage that they previously didn't have. That, like you said, just to make one race have a bunch more stats feels unfair. For Alliance that I've been playing for a long time to say, well, now Horde has it easier, damn it, and that really frustrates me. That doesn't kill your ability to play PvE. It just makes it less balanced. And so what? That's part of the game.
Okay.
Can I put on my tinfoil hat for a moment?
Please do.
What if Blizzard has just said that they were thinking about tinkering with it with no intention of actually doing it?
Look,
just to prevent aberrant player behavior.
That's actually my primary thought right now. Look, baby, I need some content. Don't fucking call me out on this one. No,
I'm revealing your secrets. You're exposing
me. Yeah. No, in my heart of hearts, you've actually brought up my number one theory here, is that nothing's going to be done, and this is just someone talking out loud in an interview. Now, look, I don't think he lied that they've had those conversations at the office, but I think they've had a lot of fucking conversations at the office, and not all of them get implemented, do they? So.
Like what to call the Cosby Suite now.
Oh,
sorry, too soon.
You're out of control. Oh my
It was
goodness.
a good
too
poll.
soon.
No. It was not too soon. It was a good poll. Stand up and take your round of applause.
Very good. Very well played.
I'm a bad man. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Now, look, on that, I was going to say...
Fuck, you's convinced me, though. I don't want it to change. I think fundamentally, not changing the racials will be the way to go.
Okay, so you're on that team. Okay, look.
Yeah, I've been swayed.
Okay.
He makes a convincing argument.
So, well, I mean, with a name like that, I believe it. But
I'm also a little scared of him because
I really don't think anything's going to happen here, and I just think that, look, the guy was asked a question. He expanded on it. This came up. I would still be shocked if anything was actually done, not because of reactions or whatever. I just think that there's, darts are thrown at a lot of things on the board in that office, and I think most of them don't hit anything significant. You know what I mean? A lot of conversations go on about what if we did this, what if we did that, and ultimately we don't find out about a lot of these possibilities. I'm sure there's a lot of outrageous suggestions that have been made over the last 2 years with changes to Classic that if we had found out, there would have been hours of podcasts and what the fuck are they thinking? And oh my God, then they just never came to be because they weren't actually serious conversations. This one just happened to hit the light because it was an off-the-cuff comment in an interview. So look, we're obviously not ruling it out because he has said it's a possibility, but I don't think we'll actually get there. But in saying that, we'll continue to talk about it like it's a possible reality because it's better to prepare for the worst and have it not happen than the other way around. Let's somewhat finish up. There's a couple of points I want to raise just before we do go to the other stuff he talked about in the interview. I think this is a really interesting point, and perhaps one of the juicier ones. I believe it's fair. Let me, again, either one of you jump on this one first. I think of someone like our friend Jay Hunk, who, okay, granted now he's played a bit of both factions, but the majority of his time has been spent with the Alliance.
What a piece of shit.
He's an absolute piece of shit of a human being. I cannot stand the guy. Absolutely irredeemable. There's your shout out, Jay.
There's just something fundamentally unsound about him.
Besides that, he gets very, very incensed when we talk about things like Phase 2 in WoW Classic and, the trauma that the Alliance went through, and just in general, the Horde population overwhelming the Alliance population on Aragorn and, of course, on other servers as well. And the Alliance just having a pretty rough go of it in general outside of a couple of select servers where they are the 99%. Now, this was really the Alliance's moment, wasn't it? Here we go. Will to survive. This racial is coming. This is fucking the Alliance, time on the throne. Horde, cower, run away with your tail between your legs because we're coming for you. The hunter has now become the hunter. If this change came to pass, Alliance players, I think, would be justifiably fucking ropeable because they do seem to have a little bit of an underdog tag here, or Blizzard. I don't believe Blizzard has a Horde or Alliance bias. I think that's fucking laughable. I think it's a joke that there is a bias towards one faction in the modern age. Whether or not there was one, I don't know. We've obviously had John Stats and stuff talk on the show about, and Bubba Share Show, I think, talk about whether or not there was actually a Horde or Alliance bias back in the day. But now I don't believe in it. However, I do believe that a knee-jerk reaction to an issue that might not be there could cause a perceived bias. My question that I'm getting to, guys, is this unfair to the people who have toughed it out with the Alliance to rob them of their moment in the sun?
It's shitty, but it's fairness. I don't know that fairness has much to do with it. Karmically, yeah. In terms of game design, they keep tinkering, and I think they opened this door in TBC when they did it with the Paladin, and it was understandable because it was one thing, but they did open that door, and they made it something where they said, okay, Alliance, you're kind of getting screwed here. We're going to help you out, and we're going to make it so that you don't all feel like you have to be Blood Elves. So that they've done it before. I would love to see Alliance have this for the players that really care about it. But I do have to agree with Hunk. Most of these people are going to be PvE players, and they're going to probably feel a bit more screwed. Phase 2 was a long time ago. I suffered through it as a Horde player on a realm that was pretty evenly split and had an awful time out in the world. So I know what you're going through. But I really enjoyed the hell out of phases 3 through 6, and you can too. So yes, it's probably not cool if they took this nice racial buff that they get, or started, removing some of the horde nerfs to make it more competitive. So I feel for you, but if they're really going to do it, I think it's a lot less about alliance fairness than, why are you making this change? And you're opening up a big Pandora's box that I don't think most players want. So alliance is going to get hurt, but everybody's going to get hurt.
Hunk, just before you jump in, I'm going to ask you to give your piece on this as well. I just want to add that, I'm looking at a meme on the WoW Classic subreddit right now that it got downvoted because I don't think the analogy is quite apt, but I'll raise it either way. Where, you might have seen it before. I'm sure both of you might be somewhat familiar with, as they call it, the boomer trolley problem, where it's got, the tram on tracks and there's a split in the tracks and it's already run over a group of people and killed them. And then there's another group of people coming up, or there's a split in the tracks to save them. And there's someone standing at the switch and it says, would it be fair to the people that the trolley has already killed to divert it now? And they're trying to say that equates to this racial change right now. I don't think it's quite hit the mark, but I sort of understand what they were getting at with the tram being the horde and diverting it away, I believe. Hunk, do you think that, number one, do you think that was a shitty analogy to draw up by myself? But also, tell me what you would say to Jay calling you the piece of shit now if you are all for the Alliance getting dicked over here.
Well, firstly, I would say to Jay that hurts my feelings. And secondly, if he gives me his address, I'll mail him a bag of cement so he can harden the fuck up. No, I agree. It does feel really shitty if you were the Alliance player who's been looking forward to some battlegrounds on your human, and to have this even talked about is going to feel shitty and enraging. I don't know, we're playing Classic with certain expectations. I didn't necessarily think even giving Scylla the Martyr to the Alliance was a great idea. I liked that the Paladins were different on both sides. Well, Paladin to Blood Knight, I guess. So yeah, I could understand that. I hope it doesn't, happen. If it does happen, I hope it's just an arena.
Okay. Guys, well, I'll move on to the next topic now. We've kind of done the racial, changes argument. I'll just end on this one point. Like I said, I really would hope that this was just a pie in the sky conversation in the Classic office and that nothing comes of it. I personally do not want this to happen along the same lines of what I said with the engineering thing. Whilst theoretically, I understand you're game devs, this is your job to put the game dev hat on and say, how can we make the game be the best and fairest that it can be to a certain extent? In a cold vacuum, sure, racial abilities should be equally balanced. Sure, engineering shouldn't be drastically more powerful than other professions, and they should all be equally lovely. However, I don't believe that Classic is the game to go in and make those changes and balance that stuff. I feel like you would run the risk of upsetting too many people because they are anchored to the past with the knowledge that they have of the game, and that is a hell of a hurdle to overcome. If this were the game in the moment, if this were Wrath 15 years ago, if this were TBC 15 years ago, absolutely, sure, go for it before people get too attached. Fucking nerf engineering, fucking nerf will to survive. Balance everything as much as you can. Go in and tinker with it. Things are a little bit out of whack. But we're 15 years on, and I think that a big reason people play this Classic franchise is because of that emotional attachment to the information that they have regarding the game, and they enjoy playing the game that way. And that drastically balancing things now in favor of fairness, well, this isn't a very fair player base, is it? So they're not going to react well. That's just my 2 cents, guys. Tell me if that was well said or if I'm a fucking idiot. I'll move on to the next topic.
No, it's good. It's good. One of the things that when you first brought this up, Josh, I went back to a couple articles that I'd read about research in WoW and the game design and the notion of a lucid change, as Craig Lindley calls it. He's a Swedish researcher, I think, who's worked in Australia too. And he basically said that anytime you have a real significant change in the environment and the way that it works, people see the game differently. And this was what would be a lucid change. It was the first time that racials were really adjusted. And players have had that expectation that this is coming because they knew it was coming, and they play it on private servers, and they see what the expectation is, and they don't do really well. That's another article that I found of 2 wonderful scholars wrote in 2018 that basically says they don't have really good resilience in the face of design changes. And part of the reason that people are going back to this game is partly because of its nostalgia, like you said, but partly because of its predictability. They know that this isn't a brand new thing that they have to figure out, and there's some comfort in it. So there's that nostalgia factor, there's the comfort factor, and I think Blizzard is aware of that. And for them to go ahead and just make the change unilaterally to do this, as you said, in the name of balance, is going to be such a big change that they're going to lose far more people than they would have preventatively lost by making these kind of changes. So I'd agree with you completely.
Hunk, when was the last time you started quoting academic papers back to me on this show, you piece of shit? What are you good for?
I'm just here for like comic relief, even though I'm not that funny.
That was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, fucks you. I appreciated that, mate.
You're welcome, sir.
This is why we bring him on, ladies and gentlemen.
He's smart and beautiful.
Exactly. Look, guys, let's go through the rest of the interview kind of in chronological order. I know nothing on this topic. I really don't feel like I can weigh in, but Hunk, I feel like you are the person to weigh in on this. Changing the number of raid lockouts. Look, there is a slowly small growing call for even this one not to be touched. Brian's mentioned it in my interview, in a couple of other interviews, and in this most recent Wowhead interview that, you know, they're looking at changing how the lockouts work because they don't want people to feel the need to do 4 lockouts, for example, of Trial of the Crusader or whatever it might be. Now, the sweaties are starting to slowly speak up and say, hey, no one's forcing people to do all the lockouts. If I'm a fucking sweat lord and I want to do 4 lockouts in a week on that raid, that's my fucking problem. Where do you sit on this?
I don't think they should touch it. Just leave it how it is. I mean, TOC's like the catch up to the penultimate raid, isn't it? Like, it's fairly easy. There's some really good 5-man gear. The raids are fairly easy. I don't think they should touch it.
Fuck you. How do you feel about it?
I second that. If Ulduar is not attractive by itself to run, then people aren't going to run it. People are not avoiding BT or Hyjal because they are pushed into Sunwell. It's because they don't feel the desire to do it. They're just not that appealing. Ulduar is marked up as one of the greatest raids of all time, so let people enjoy it at their pace and give the players the choice.
Very good. Guys, we'll move on. Brian extrapolate a little bit on the Wintergrasp issue, and I think, you know, this is one of Aile's big bugaboos. He is dying to see what they're going to do with Wintergrasp because he is very pessimistic that they're going to be able to address this in a proper fashion, because Wintergrasp is phenomenal if all is going well on your server. If not, what's the fucking point of it? Brian gave a little bit more information, you know, than what we said in our interview here. It was mentioned in the question, I think, brilliantly, that, you know, things such as, I'm not really familiar with it. Rockman in his interview raised the tenacity buff. Do you guys know about this one?
Yeah, that's increases the health, basically, doesn't it? Of
health and damage, doesn't it?
Health and damage of the lesser faction, yeah.
Very good. Okay, so Rockman basically suggested unless Brian mentioned it somewhere else, I can't see it. But anyway, they raised the tenacity buff and possibly, getting this just to go ballistic in Wintergrasp. What about people being able to stack it to 100 if they're is this the way, like, was this a Wintergrasp thing, the tenacity back in the day?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay. I didn't do Wintergrasp, so I didn't know. I thought this was from retail. Okay, I'm with you.
No, it was capped at 20, and so he's saying we'll increase that by 5 times.
Yeah, what if it went up to something silly like 100?
You're just this one-man wrecking crew. So you become a mini raid boss, like you become a boss during the AQ event that's out in the world.
I don't think that's a horrible idea. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think I mean, there's nothing else they can do, though.
No, that's right. But
the
imbalance, they don't have balanced servers anymore, except for where you civilized people live and you play the game properly. For the rest of the world, it's sure, give that one Alliance player that's still on Scarum with a dead realm, give them the power to go out and be a badass for a day, but they can't do anything else. So I don't know that it's going to save anything.
One guy's just going to live in Wintergrasp.
I guess, yeah.
I would never fucking leave if I was like just like Thanos, basically, with my Infinity Gauntlet, fucking swinging my dick around, just going, fuck off you. That'd be great. But I mean, they're still talking about the options that are on the table there. And as many of these answers, Brian mentioned, we're still considering. There wasn't much definitive stuff here. But I think high stacks of tenacity would be a start, at least. But, it makes me think of the kind of wacky gameplay that we love about old school WoW and some of the trinkets that make us, a fucking god for a second and blah, blah, blah. I mean, 100 stacks of tenacity, if there's, for some reason, 5 Alliance players and 35 or, 65 Horde players in the zone, fuck it, make them work for it.
Like, one of the funniest things you ever see in, like, Classic was a rogue gank a warrior, and he puts on recklessness and just one-shots the rogue. Like, that sort of stuff, that sort of zany gameplay, I'm kind of, like, all for that. I think it's fun. So I like
it. Doesn't hurt anything, but I think it's the notion of like, what's the point? Is this really going to make that much of a difference? And so,
and it needs to make a difference.
But it's the bigger issue that he solves in there is saying that you have some sort of a backdoor. So if you are on a dominated server, you don't need to control that to be able to get in.
Well, the only problem with that is, you're probably going to have to do the backdoor thing in order to allow the undersized faction to, get access to that area. But then it still robs the zone of the flavor that it was created for, doesn't it?
What choice do you have, though?
I guess, yeah.
That's just what it comes down to. They can't. I don't know. How can they fix the population imbalance without, like, even with the radical changes, there's people who'll just quit.
I want an item. I want, when I go to the zone, if I am on, I don't know, you probably couldn't do this, but in theory, I want this to work. I go to the zone, I'm on the undersized faction, I get an item from an NPC that's like a trinket, like a zone ability or something that I pop, and it spawns 10 fucking NPCs around me that are levels 80 elites or whatever, and they help me fight. I don't know, something like that. Fuck.
Yeah, like, I think like one solution would be just to have the old like queue system back where you can have up to like, what is it, like 80 players in there or something, or 100 and something, 120 players from each, or 80 players from each faction. And then when the Wintergrasp starts, just randomly selects everyone like a lottery and just teleports everyone else out. So up to 80 players. Most servers will be able to get 80 people from the other faction except for Scarum. Do stuff like that. I don't know. It's Hey, I've got a question.
Yeah, man.
Weird question, kind of involved in this different.
A classic Hunk question.
How would this conversation we're having today, do you think it would be different if like paid faction changes were a thing?
Yes, I think the conversation would be going differently, but I'm glad you raised this because
Because he said they're uncertain about it, right?
I thought they'd ruled them out. In the interview, does he sort of leave it open? Let me see. I thought he'd all but ruled it out. And I think there's a very specific reason for that.
Because I don't think he actually says it's not going to happen, does he?
He doesn't in this interview, but with me or somewhere else, I'm pretty sure he said, no, it's not happening. Now, look, I mean, okay. My not so tinfoil hat theory on this one is, I've been ranting a little bit about this privately to friends recently going, look, I'm looking forward to Wrath, but I am stepping into it with a huge amount of trepidation as well. The classic franchise has headed in a very funny direction. Obviously it feels different to back in the day. That's fine. You're never going to, we're all chasing the dragon here and we're never going to catch the dragon. The feeling's not going to be the same. But the feeling has been so bizarre for me personally, as a boomer, as a casual, a high volume playing casual, that the game has just felt very awkward at times. I feel like what's happening now with the denial of faction changes kind of falls in line with, what is a part Blizzard, part player-based combination of why the game feels so awkward. Now, we got a taste of it in TBC with the advent of the boost, and we all know what the results of the boost coming in were. A lot of people used it, and quite frankly, I think that the boost, I don't have any figures in front of me, and people are going to say, "Source, Josh, source." Let's just, Hunk will laugh at this. Let's go with the castle theory and just go with a vibe, right? I've got a vibe that Blizzard sold a squillion fucking boosts, right? And that TBC actually made pretty fucking good money. Despite the fact that fewer people were playing it than were playing Classic, yes, they lost monthly subs, but they gained a shitload of boosts at $60 a pop AUD, right? And I think that, the team brought Holly on from EverQuest. She was doing similar things with EverQuest, producing that game and figuring out how to, design the monetization scheme and things like that. And she's come over from there. She's done her thing with WoW Classic. And by all means, everyone raves about Holly and says she's an amazing team member. I've no doubt she's a wonderful dev. And part of the reason she's a wonderful dev is she has created this architecture for a shitload of income coming into the game, which is exactly, obviously we make games, people make games to make money. There is no shame in that. That's totally fine. I don't like it when people shame companies for making money. It's just, at times there are egregious ways of making money that we do kind of cry out about, and oftentimes fairly, I think. But, the boost, relatively innocuous income stream. And I think it was such a great income stream. Holly was promoted to, I believe, executive producer of the franchise of World of Warcraft in general after 12 fucking months with the company. That's a quick promotion and a big promotion, because I'm sure the combination of her resume and the effect that she had on the company's bottom line with things that she put in place have elevated her to that prominent position. And I'm not detracting from that. Golf claps all around for Holly on that achievement. But what I'm getting at is it has made the game feel very monetized, the Classic franchise, in a way that we Classic players weren't quite used to. Obviously, retailers have been used to it for some time. That monetization feeling is only being extended upon in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. And don't get me wrong, as I say, nothing wrong with asking for money from players for optional services, but I do feel a little bit awkward when I described it in the Discord the other day as kind of like, I now am very cognizant of the pig pen around me, and it's being designed to filter and usher me in a certain direction. Now, we just talked about the human racial and everything, and a lot of people that might have wanted to buy a faction change to go human for that PvP racial because it means that much to them. What would it have been? I don't know, 20, 30 bucks for a faction change. It would have been half the fucking price of a boost, I can assure you of that much. But why would Blizzard be so foolish as to offer people a half price option to get what they want when they can charge them the price of the boost to achieve the same thing? So again, the walls are being erected in a way to funnel us towards that boost, if that's what you want. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying every player is compelled to buy a boost for this reason, but I'm just saying they know how to increase the numbers. They are a business. They are very smart in that regard. And I am very aware of why certain things are being allowed and disallowed now. It is to drive the sales of this one component that is doing very fucking well for them. That was a bit of verbal diarrhea. I'm so sorry, guys. Tell me if I am, and by all means, you guys are my friends. You're allowed to say, Josh, you're a fucking tinfoil idiot. Please go nuts on what I've just said.
Friends is a strong statement.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. That's it.
You know. Yeah, well, I mean, we could. I think you're pretty spot on.
Sycophants that are close. You're right about the general monetization. I think the and what it's led to is the specter of people basically saying, now that this is a possibility, what will be monetized next? And the survey was one guide, though they really didn't do much for the survey, and the survey beyond what has already been done, and things like a specific mount that could go into Classic or character transfer, which they already have as a paid character transfer, or the Death Knight level boost, which they have said they're not going to do, that you are going to not be able to boost it. You're going to be at 55, and maybe they can walk that back. The friend boost for characters, like a gift kind of thing, which was a thing in Lich King anyway, to get people leveled up with that 3-time experience stuff. So I guess it's a thing that they're trying to see what will float. I don't know that things like racials would be monetized and allow that to be something that's affecting the balance of the game. Going back and forth and making changes to your character, that's something that I don't think they've opened yet, and I don't know that they will. So like the pay to respect, that's not in-game currency, that kind of stuff seems to be off the table. So I would encourage you to keep wearing the tinfoil hat. I would never tell you that you're a fucking idiot, because you're not. But I would say that it's probably less likely that those aspects out of what they've already done with some slight cosmetic stuff would be heavily monetized. But that I also said that they weren't going to change mechanics in Molten Core, so you can call me an idiot.
Well, I mean, they did eventually with Solemn, didn't they? So you can still claim partial credit.
They did. I said it could never be done. So, they'll do what they're going to do.
There you go. Hunk, how about you, mate?
I've become very, suspicious of game monetization over the last 10 years. It's incredibly manipulative. So I could see, what you're proposing having some merit. They, we're not going to put in the faction changes, but they leave open a more expensive route to backdoor a faction change, which is to get a new account and boost, so you can get a new boost, and then you can use that boost on a different faction. So yeah, I can see it as being a way of trying to have their cake and eat it too, by appealing to a certain segment of the player base who doesn't want those services available, while still allowing the people who want to use those services to get there in a roundabout way and pay more money for it. So yeah, I can see that.
All right, guys, let's move on. I'll probably talk more about that in future, guys. I don't know. That was just something I wanted to get off my chest, and that's about as unhinged as I get, even though I think I was still relatively...
Yeah, particularly when you called us friends. I'm more of a well-wisher in that I don't wish you any specific
assorted hanger-honorers.
No, we're friends.
Oh, sweetheart.
Maybe even lovers.
Oh, well, the next level. All right. After all those photos you sent me, I get it now. It makes sense. Look, guys, pre-nerf, post-nerf. some have been saying that, you know, obviously Brian mentions in the interview that they're not interested in doing this because they don't feel that Wrath really had much of a pre-nerf scene as you know, Vanilla and TBC did. I think this has come under fire a little bit in the last couple of days, with some people saying, no, there were pre-nerf encounters that we're absolutely interested in. Don't shoot the messenger if I get this wrong, guys, but I think, you know, obviously, you know, things like, as you pointed out to me earlier, Hunk, the Lich King, and also I think this one surprised you guys. I swear I've seen people talk about a pre-nerf Ulduar that was of interest as well. How do you guys feel about this? Does it bother you or not that we wouldn't get pre-nerf versions of things in Wrath?
It doesn't particularly bother me whether it's pre-nerf or post-nerf. I think the way they did it in TBC was interesting. Pre-nerf for a bit, then post-nerf. I remember in Wrath they had that there was a buff that increased each week going into ICC. Do you remember the name of the buff? The aura.
You are.
I can't remember the name of it. Yeah,
I
don't. So that'd be nice. Maybe more time without that aura stacking up. That sort of thing. So I don't really mind, but yeah. Hopefully pre-nerf if there were significant nerfs and not just bug fixes. I can't remember any off the top of my head. Besides like Lich King.
Likewise, I don't have a good opinion on it. But Lich King seemed to have significantly less challenge in some of the raids overall for a lot of the guilds compared to TBC. And TBC was a very noticeable, okay, this is a solid wall that everybody's hitting, so now we're going to change it. But it's not, I have to agree with Hunk. If they can do pre-nerf, great. But do it for a little while and then give everybody what they want, which is ease.
But what I remember actually from Wrath about the difficulty was very few people actually did the difficult achievements. Like there was like tribute to immortality and insanity and the undying, those sorts of achievements of like clearing the whole raid with like no deaths from anyone in the raid group. I think there was like some difficult content. Like I think Firefighter Mimirin, like Firefighter had to have been like probably the most difficult fight they've done to date. Maybe the player base was just better and like the smaller, I don't know, the 10, people could go in twice as many lockouts and like there wasn't as much of a punishment for like, consumables weren't as expensive so you could full consume every attempt. I'm not sure. But yeah, I remember a lot of people on like the forum used to say, oh, this is too easy. Well, for epics everywhere. And like they had never done Firefighter or, Yogg Zero. They didn't have tribute to immortality achievements or the Undying or anything like that. They'd never done a Lich King hard mode. Yeah, I think the difficulty's there. It's just at the time, it was the first time there were options to make it much easier. And so people did it the easy way without doing it the hard way. It's like saying like retail's too easy now, and it's a person who's never killed a mythic boss when like mythic raids in retail are ridiculously difficult.
Guys, I'll ask the last thing now. My lovely dog Doug is jumping on me on stream, begging to be played with. So we'll do one last question and then I'll head off and play with the dogs. Look, the last thing Brian touches on, well, actually, no, there's actually a fair bit more. There's two more points. I don't think we don't even need to talk about it. Look, he's backtracked on the dual spec thing. Initially, he said that there was going to be perhaps some restrictions on dual spec. Now they've said there's not going to be any restrictions, which is exactly what people wanted because people freaked the fuck out as soon as he said that there was going to be restrictions. And, why not just do it as it was back in the day? Good news is that they've obviously heard that feedback and said, all right, we'll walk it back and just do it like you want it. Wish they would do that in regards to a few other things. But stopping bots in Wrath Classic, this issue was raised by Rockman. And, it is of interest, as we've pointed out, that they are going to have every account, regardless of whether you've got a level 55 or not, be able to start a level 55 Death Knight. this has severe repercussions for the game in terms of botting. Botting is still rampant. If you aren't aware, everyone, the bots are not so much out in the open anymore. They're all in instances. They're all still there en masse doing their thing. It is insanity. It just never ends. And now we've got this instance where I feel like every guy, girl, and child who bots will just have the Death Knight option sitting there. So why the fuck would I? I've been buying all these boosts that Blizzard started offering to do my botting. Now I can just do it for free, basically. Granted, they have to level the 55 up to 80, but if you're a botter, that's really not much of a concern. And again, I'll shout out again, guys, by all means, I encourage people to go and check out other WoW content. If you like WoW podcasts, guys, I listen to everything. So, go and check out the Dalaran Sewers podcast where Scotty J raised the point that I'm about to raise. Go and check out, Blazing Bob and Yip and Mel over at, oh my God, I've forgotten the name of their podcast. Bob's going to kill me. Fucking Hunk, help me out. Why have I gone a mental blank? I'll pull it up on my phone right now. Oh, I'm the worst person.
What did you figure? What are you?
The name of Bob's podcast. Warcraft Reloaded. God, I'm a fucking asshole. I swear, Bob, that wasn't a slide. I just mental blank. I fucking know the name of your podcast. I swear to God. I'm a piece of shit. But anyway, the reason I've raised Scotty J's podcast again, fucking 2 shout outs to Scotty J on this podcast. It's all happening. He raised the point that, herbalism, mining on a Death Note's a great show. Go watch it. Death Knight bot account. Why wouldn't they all be doing this? And I'm sure it will be prevalent. Why? I understand why Blizzard has done this. Okay, we want accessibility. I also think Blizzard has a very vested interest in keeping the botting population high in WoW Classic that they could never admit to because of the significant amount of monthly income that it brings by way of subscriptions. I won't go into that. But what I will say is this is a problem for me that Death Knights just can be created on any fresh account at 55. Do you guys expect that botting will be the same or, worse in Wrath Classic with this as an option?
It's already pretty much a rampant disease on every populated server. I think it'll just be the same. Yeah. As soon as they get banned, they make a new account and boost. Now they'll just make a Death Knight.
This is not a catalyst. It's a symptom, and they're going to have to fight this symptom unless they find a good way to stop botting proactively. It's just going to keep going, and people will find new ways to do it. So yeah, it enables botting for sure, but it is a rampant disease, and they are not going to cure it simply by removing this ability.
We need a deep throat. We need that, whether it happens now or in a book 20 years down the line, that person coming forward going, oh yeah, we were on board with the bots. We knew what was going on with the bots, and we had a way of making sure we got their money while, trying to show you.
They're running the bot.
Sorry?
They're double dipping. They're running the bots. They're double dipping.
Yeah, the classic team's piloting 20 at a time.
Yeah, they've written intelligent AI to hide their own gold selling.
God, we're through the looking glass here, people.
In association with the reverse vampires. The classic team.
On that note, what a great note to go out on. Look, guys, let's say our thank yous and our goodbyes. You two are nothing but the best. I love you dearly. And Hunk's now divulged exactly how deep that love goes. Hunk, I'll start with you and I'll end with Fahq you. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure. We have to do, you know what we need to do? We need to just do a beer pod, like just you and I having a few beers shooting the shit sometime soon.
I think that's a great idea. Countdown after dark.
Yeah, man. Why not?
Why are you finishing with me first? Are you saving the best to last?
Well, yeah.
Well, I get it, but rude.
Oh, my God. All right. Anyway, is there anyone you want to shout out, you piece of shit?
Oh, as always, the loaf guys and girls, the grim guys and girls, everyone in the Countdown Discord. You guys are all amazing.
There's another call about this in this podcast that you haven't heard, Hunk, but you would have seen an announcement in the Loaf Discord where Staunch was letting Loaf know that Afala was walking away from Classic WoW, and I don't know how he's going to emotionally recover from this.
No, Afala's like Staunch's dad. If I was I was trying to grasp for something, another way to put it, but I'll say dad. Everyone in Loaf calls Staunch dad.
Afala's granddad.
Afala's granddad, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Staunch's daddy.
Very good. Staunch's daddy. Very good. Fahq. God, it's getting saucy over here. Fahq, class the place up, mate. Thank you so much again. You are the best. You know I love talking to you. Look, any shout outs? I know you're not playing the game, but say whatever you want to say, mate.
Thank you, Josh. As always, it's a blast to be here. Thanks for letting me bloviate on various things. I will say I'm Ukrainian by descent, and I'll tell people that Airbnb is still removing the fees for Ukrainian places that you intend to never go and stay. And it's one of the easiest ways to get money directly into the hands of people who need it. Their economy is going to be devastated for a very, very long time. And people are going to forget about the immediacy of stuff. So if you've got 10, 15, 20, 30 bucks that you want to send their way, find an Airbnb rental for that for somebody in an apartment and just shoot it to them. And you'll be helping out some people who really need it.
You're a good man, mate, and I absolutely second that. There is a particular Countdown listener whose ears just perked up dramatically. I'll have a chat to you about that after this. Fahq. But yes, everyone, not to step too outside the bounds of what we normally talk about on the show, but yeah, the war is still very much ongoing, and please don't, please keep it, what's going on over there at the forefront of your minds, and we feel for all the horrible things that's happening in Ukraine at the moment, and wish nothing but the best for the Ukrainians, fighting the fight that they are over there. Thank you for shouting that out, mate. Look, let's wind it up there, guys. I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for having us,
later, Josh. Have a good one.
Thanks, stream. We'll see you later.
Love you.
Love you too. Bye.